Okay, so it's that time of year again where I rank my top 40 roller coasters that I've been on. Now, I do have enough credits to make a top 50 or a top 75 even, but those coasters wouldn't really be interesting content in my opinion, so we're going to stick with the top 40. And I can already tell that this is going to be a very long video, so let's waste no time and just get right into it. Number 40, Mystery Mine at Dollywood, and this is by far the best themed Eurofighter I've ever been on. Seriously, the theming here is top notch, I love it. Now, the roller coaster's layout itself though is kind of okay in my opinion. The first half isn't my favorite. The first half, basically, it's a Wild Mouse coaster, but with over-the-shoulder restraints, which I'm not a huge fan of. But the second half has a very steep drop and two very good inversions, but after that, the ride's basically over. Overall, though, this roller coaster is still fun for the theming alone. Number 39 is Diamondback at Frontier City. Now, this roller coaster may be small, but don't let that fool you because this roller coaster is amazing. This is an aerial shuttle loop coaster, so you basically get pushed into a dip, a vertical loop, then rise up and do the whole thing backwards again. And these dips have literally ejector airtime. It's literally insane. And when you're going backwards, if you're in the front car, you get backwards ejector airtime. It's just phenomenal. And the vertical loop is also intense. I mean, this roller coaster is just plain fun. 38 is Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood. This is by far my favorite aero looper coaster, because for one, it's the smoothest aero I've ever been on, and two, the inversions are much larger compared to the inversions on prior aero looping coasters. The drop is also fantastic. It takes place in a tunnel and you actually get some floater airtime if you're in the back row. Really, my only complaint is that this roller coaster is pretty short. 37, Cyclops at Mount Olympus. Just like with Tennessee Tornado, this roller coaster is on the shorter side, but dude, this thing packs a punch. The drop may be short, but it gives some surprisingly good ejector airtime, and from there, it has laterals, it has airtime, and my personal favorite part is the dive off the cliff. It's basically a second longer drop, and the ejector airtime you get is pretty insane. This coaster does run a little bit rough, but it wasn't unbearable in my opinion. Number 36 is Gemini at Cedar Point. I'm going to say it, I think this roller coaster is a bit underrated. Sure, it's no longer one of Cedar Point's top roller coasters, but guys, I love this thing. It has pretty decent floater airtime moments, and I love the racing aspect of it. It just puts a big smile on my face. It just makes me so happy. On top of that, despite being an aero coaster built in the 70s, it's shockingly smooth. Number 35 is Zeus at Mount Olympus. Now, on paper, this is just a very simple out and back roller coaster, but it manages to have some amazing airtime. And it's also the smoothest roller coaster at Mount Olympus by far. Zeus still remains my favorite roller coaster built by CCI. Coming in at 34 is Wicked Twister at Cedar Point. This is the only defunct credit on this list, and I only had a few rides on this thing, but I remember being slightly impressed and slightly underwhelmed. I liked this roller coaster's launch, and I loved experiencing the backwards twisted spike in the back row. However, the pull-ups into the spikes were surprisingly underwhelming in terms of G-force, like they were kind of weak in my opinion. Especially compared to another Intimate Impulse, which, spoiler alert, is next on this list. Number 33 is Steel Venom at Valley Fair. Now, the main two reasons why I prefer this one to Wicked Twister is because the pull-ups into the spikes are much more intense because they're tighter, and the holding brake is just amazing. To this day, this is the only impulse that still uses the hold brake. Besides that though, I do love the launch and the twisted spike, and riding in the back seat up the vertical spike is absolutely terrifying. 32 is Patriots at Worlds of Fun. This was my first B&M, and I had a pretty solid first experience. I thought the inversions were great, and overall it was a very fun ride. However, after riding more B&Ms, I realized that Patriots is one of the weaker B&Ms, at least in terms of intensity. Still though, this roller coaster was good enough to make my top 40, so That's saying something. 31 is Valraven at Cedar Point. Now, I only slightly prefer this over Patriots because honestly, Valraven isn't the most intense B&M out there. Sure, it's tall and it has a very steep drop, but I don't know, man, that mid-course brake run just kills any momentum this thing had, and people say B&M dive coasters are one-trick ponies, and I definitely concur, although I do like the big inversions. 30. Wild Eagle at Dollywood. Now, in my previous video, I said that this was my favorite B&M wing coaster, and I have to tell you guys, that was incorrect. I'm sorry. Yes, I lied. Whatever. Anyways, Wild Eagle. I like the setting on top of the hill, and the inversions are pretty enjoyable in my opinion. Also, people say this roller coaster is rough, but I thought it was pretty smooth. Sure, it does kind of meander a little bit towards the end with that totally unnecessary figure 8 stuff. I mean, this stuff does nothing, but overall, the ride, rock solid. 29 is Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. Now this is my favorite B&M wing coaster, and I have my reasons. This coaster's first drop is superior to Wild Eagle's first drop in my opinion. It's a wing over drop and it pulls some very decent force at the pullout. It's incredible. Also, love the inversions, especially the keyhole elements. It really feels like you're going to smack your head or feet into these things, and it makes you flinch every single time. Also, this coaster's placement and color scheme is perfect. 28 is Rougarou at Cedar Point. Now, I only slightly prefer this over Gatekeeper, but I personally think that Rougarou is a little bit underrated. Sure, the second half of this roller coaster isn't that good, but the first half I'm a really big fan of. I like the inversions, especially the dive loop, and the incline loop is also pretty great. Overall, it feels faster in my opinion too than Gatekeeper, so that's why I like it just a little bit better. 27, Batman the Ride at Six Flags Over Texas. Surprisingly, this is the only Batman clone I've ever been on, and I like this one quite a bit, so I look forward to riding more of these at other Six Flags parks. This ride is just very fast paced. You're thrown whippy inversion after whippy inversion, and it's great. It pulls a lot of forces too, it's very intense. B&M really did a good job with their original invert layout, and it's no surprise why this has been cloned so many times. Number 26 is Wildfire at Silver Dollar City. Wow guys, so many B&Ms bunched together in this ranking, but anyways, not only does Wildfire have a spectacular view, it has a few tricks up its sleeve as well. For one, if you're in the back row, on the first drop, you will get some pretty decent floater airtime, and the inversions all add up to a really good B&M sit down. 25 is Mamba at Worlds of Fun. I was really looking forward to riding this roller coaster trimless this year, but my trip was cancelled due to weather, so I was kind of bummed out about that. So as it stands, Mamba is my least favorite hypercoaster, but it has some redeeming qualities. The first half has some good airtime on the first drop in that huge camelback hill, and the helix section is surprisingly intense for a Morgan. It's a shame that in my 2021 visit, this was trimming so hard that the second half was pretty much uneventful. Coming in at 24 is Titan at Six Flags Over Texas. This is a very interesting hypercoaster, and that's a good thing, but also kind of a bad thing. So the first drop had unfortunately no airtime in my experience, but the speed hill after the turnaround gave some pretty decent floater. This roller coaster has a great sense of speed, especially on the upward helix, which delivers some bone-crushing Gs that make you gray out. It's just super intense. But all of that momentum is lost when you hit the mid-course brake run. It slows you down to a crawl, and it's a big buzzkill. The second half is pretty alright in my opinion, but that momentum lost on the mid-course brake run really killed it for me. 23. Excalibur at Valley Fair. Over the past few years, I've grown to love this roller coaster a lot more, and even though it is pretty short, what it has to offer is still amazing. It has ejector airtime on the first drop, it has a very intense helix, it has a Magnum ejector moment on that S-curve hill, And just this ride just packs a solid punch and a very short layout. 22 is Wild Thing at Valley Fair. Now, Excalibur is catching up to Wild Thing, but as of right now, I slightly prefer Wild Thing over Excalibur, mainly because, unlike Excalibur, Wild Thing's not over in less than 45 seconds. I like the first drop, and that floater airtime hill after the first drop still puts a big smile on my face. The floater airtime is magical on that hill. The rest of the ride though, it's alright. 21, Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City. This is a very interesting launch coaster, but honestly, I'm a big fan. Every good launch coaster needs to have a good first launch, and Powder Keg has a great one. And from there, it's a very fun layout with some floater airtime elements and whippy transitions mixed in. Okay, now we're at the top 20, and at this part, we get a bit more serious because these roller coasters are amazing. I could spend all day riding these roller coasters. I love them. So let's waste no more time and get into number 20, which is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, one of my all-time favorite launch coasters. And it's incredible, guys. The first launch is an absolute gut punch. The inverted top hat is also amazing. The overbank turn is intense, and don't even get me started on the vertical spike. Holy crap, when you get boosted up this over 200 foot tall vertical spike, it really is terrifying, and I love it. 19, Raptor at Cedar Point. This is basically textbook definition of a good old school classic B&M invert. Just like with Batman the Ride, the inversions are well timed and very whippy. But beyond that, you also have a good first drop and some very intense helixes. Also, love the color scheme. Number 18 is Monster at Adventureland. I first experienced this roller coaster back in 2019, and I remember being absolutely blown away by it. Fast forward to this past year, and I finally make it out to Adventureland again, and I gotta say, Monster still impresses me. The first drop is fantastic, and the elements are not only well timed, but they're some of the best elements I've ever experienced on a Gerstlauer roller coaster before. Seriously, I say that Monster is one of the best Gerstlauers in the entire country. It's one of my all-time favorite roller coasters. Number 17, Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas. Talk about a hidden gem. I mean, this thing is underrated in every sense of the word. Not only are the two loops super forceful and super intense that you pretty much black out, but the dips have incredible ejector airtime in the back row. Like, it's scary good ejector airtime. Seriously, when you're at Six Flags Over Texas, do not overlook this absolute gem of a ride. Coming in at number 16 is Afterburn at Carowinds. And yes, this is my favorite B&M invert. Honestly, not that much better than Raptor. I just slightly prefer this one. Just like Raptor, this roller coaster is fast-paced and the inversions are super whippy, especially the Batwing element with the trenches. I love that. But overall, I think Afterburn does intensity a little bit better than Raptor. 15, Prowler at Worlds of Fun. It's no secret that I love GCI wooden coasters, and Prowler did not disappoint. This roller coaster has pretty good airtime, and I love how excluded this roller coaster is. It really feels like you're racing through the woods, and I'm sure night rides on this thing are a blast. This roller coaster though is a bit rough, so I hope Worlds of Fun will retrack it some. Also, I did like the other GCIs on this list a little bit better, but as it stands, Prowler is still pretty impressive. 14, Intimidator at Carowinds. Believe it or not, this is the only B&M Hyper I've ever been on, and I gotta say, I had a really good introduction to B&M's hypercoaster model because Intimidator was spectacular. The floater airtime on this thing is what really got me. I mean, seriously, this is some of the best floater airtime I've ever experienced on a hypercoaster before, and because of that, I look forward to riding more B&M Hypers from here on out. Number 13 is Thunderhead at Dollywood. Another amazing GCI. Seriously, everything good about GCI can be found in this roller coaster. It has excellent pacing, it has amazing airtime like flow ejector airtime, and a very cool station flyby. Sure, this roller coaster can be rough in certain parts, but all of the good stuff completely overshadows that, and it's just overall an amazing ride. Very close to being my number 1 GCI, but that title still belongs to number 12, which is Renegade at Valley Fair. Yeah, this roller coaster dropped a few spots in my rankings this year, and I was heavily considering putting Thunderhead over this one because I'll be honest, Renegade was kind of disappointing this year. For most of the season, Renegade was running significantly slower and rougher. Then for some reason, it decided to warm up and it was running pretty good in October, but still, Renegade is not what it used to be, and I really hope it can return to its former glory because at its best, Renegade is an elite roller coaster. 11 is the legendary Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point. The world's first hypercoaster, and this thing still kicks butt. I mean, sure, this thing is janky as heck, but that's all made up for when we reach the finale. To this day, I have never experienced such an amazing finale ever before. Magnum's finale is just, it's mind-blowing. The triangle ejector airtime hills are lethal. Like, you feel like you're gonna fly out on these things, and it's just insane. Making the top 10 this year is New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. RMC really did get a lot of stuff right with their first roller coaster project because while this thing isn't as impressive as the newer RMCs, it still holds its own as a phenomenal ride. I love the steep drop and all of the wave turns, and the airtime is pretty strong, especially in the back row, and not to mention this thing is buttery smooth. Even over 10 years later, this thing is still impressive. Number 9, Hades 360 at Mount Olympus. I will say I do have to ride this roller coaster again to kind of refresh my memory, but from what I remember, this thing was just insanely intense, especially in the underground tunnel with all the ejector airtime moments. It was just incredible, and the inversion was fun, same with the overbank turn, and this thing even has a pre-lift section that can qualify as its own roller coaster because it's that good. This thing is kind of rough though, so it's not super re-rideable, but thank God it has Timberliner trains because those things are amazing. Number 8 is the world's first ever Giga, Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Guys, this thing is a timeless classic and one of my favorite roller coasters. This thing has the best view on any roller coaster I've ever been on, and I love the gigantic drop, the overbank turns, the floater airtime hills, especially the speed hill, and even though it's 22 years old, it's still glass smooth. Again guys, this thing is just a timeless classic, and still holds its own even when more modern Gigas have surpassed it in some areas. Number 7, Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. Right off the bat, this is some of the best theming I've ever seen at a Cedar Fair park for a roller coaster. Although the first launch is pretty weak, this roller coaster's layout has a lot going for it. I mean, you have ejector airtime hills, you have whippy transitions, you have huge inversions that offer some amazing hang time, and let's not forget the amazing JoJo roll out of the station. This roller coaster is an absolute blast. Number 6, Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. Although I will say Copperhead Strike is more re-rideable, Time Traveler still beats it just because this thing is absolutely crazy. You have a vertical drop right out of the station, you have 2 launches, you have whippy transitions, you have some crazy fun inversions, and if that wasn't enough, you're doing all this while you're spinning. It's an experience unlike any other, and let's not forget about this roller coaster's excellent theming too. I mean, this thing is insanely good. Number 5, Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. I'm not going to lie to you guys, after my first ride on this roller coaster, I really wasn't that impressed, but as the day went on, this roller coaster warmed up, and at nightfall, I had the best night ride experience I have ever had. Outlaw Run is fast-paced, it has plenty of airtime moments, and it has 3 inversions to top it all off. Doing all of that in pitch darkness is an unforgettable experience. Outlaw Run is an underrated RMC. Number 4 is Lightning Rod at Dollywood. This one is similar to Outlaw Run, but this one has a launch lift hill, so how cool is that? Just like Outlaw Run, this one has incredible pacing, but where Lightning Rod really shines is the incredible wave turns and the quadruple down with some of the most unbelievable airtime imaginable. I can say with confidence that I am a huge fan. Making the top 3 is Maverick at Cedar Point, and wow, what a tremendous ride. The pacing here is off the charts, and the airtime is strong. On top of that, you have some crazy whippy transitions and elements, and hey, while you're at it, you might as well have some inversions, right? Maverick never lets up, and it's a fantastic ride. And it's crazy that we still have 2 more roller coasters to talk about. Second place is Fury 325 at Carowinds, and oh boy guys, this one completely blew my mind. It's crazy enough for something like this to exist in the first place. This thing is absolutely massive, and that first drop feels like it lasts an eternity. Fury 325 has a top speed of 95 miles per hour, and you can really feel it. You just blaze through all the elements, and the elements on this ride are actually pretty creative, and the airtime is also top tier. Fury 325 is a ride that I just can't get enough of. And now for the coaster in first place for the second year in a row, it is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. Okay, this may not be a huge surprise, but can you guys blame me? This is literally Steel Vengeance. Do I even have to explain what this is to you? The first hyper hybrid coaster built by RMC is an absolute masterpiece. If you want to talk about perfect pacing, look no further than this ride. There's never a dull moment. Every single element is doing something. This has the most airtime of any roller coaster in the world, and it's incredible. It's strong and it's creative in ways you would never expect. The inversions are also phenomenal, and this ride really seems to last a long time thanks to a long ride duration. I just can't say enough about this ride, and that's why it still remains at number 1. So now the video is coming to a close, and I have to say, I had a blast riding new roller coasters for the first time this year, and also re-riding some other coasters that I've been on before. It was a fantastic year, and I look forward to riding more roller coasters next year as well. But for now guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can leave a like, that'd be great. And what do you guys think of my list? Please leave a comment down below, and if you're brand new around here, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. That would really help out a lot. But with that guys, have a happy new year, take it easy, and I'll see you next time on North Star Coasters. Thank you all for a fantastic 2022, and just a heads up for my viewers, I will be taking the month of January off to kind of catch a breath and think about my next year of content. So have a great day, and I'll see you guys in February.